Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Floor Studio. I am your man in Japan, Jay Contra, and we're here with I think it's March, right? Q&A. I've got a lot of new questions from everyone over the last couple weeks, so let's just dive in. Lone Wolf asks, what's your take on the coronavirus? Now, at the risk of having this video demonetized by YouTube, my take on the coronavirus is that I'm working from home more often. A lot of people in my office are here in Japan. I've noticed that when I do go into the office, the trains are a little bit less crowded. My hope is that for Japan, this blows over very quickly, and also it shows that it's possible to be just as effective working from home as from the office, so that maybe people get a little less stressed out. As for the Olympics and the things that will be happening in the summer, I have no idea how that's going to what the coronavirus is going to affect. That's just what I've noticed right now. And relatedly, asks, Jay Contra, I'm curious to know what to expect with game stores, including book off and hard offs, if they are expecting disruption in their operating hours because of the coronavirus situation. I am due to arrive in mid-April, but will adjust my schedule if stores are not open. So I actually haven't been to the shops in about a week and a half, so I don't know the latest news, but at least 2 weeks ago, everything was still open. And actually, because tourism from China is down, because China's on lockdown, actually visiting Japan like now, which is mid-March is when I'm filming this, like mid-March to April to probably even May. This is going to be an amazing, scare quotes. It's going to be really scary because, yeah, you've got a pandemic going on, but also because of that, people aren't traveling as much. Your flights are going to be a lot cheaper. Like, I've noticed that Tokyo is a lot less crowded. Now, of course, that's because for awful reasons, but if you've got plans to come anyways, then you actually might have a decent time and not have to go through the huge crowds that you would expect in Akihabara. As for stores closing, I haven't seen any stores closing yet, but I also haven't been to Akihabara in like a week, so I don't know anything. Probably the book offs will remain open. I haven't really actually seen any stores close. I think actually probably the only stores that I believe will have closed are the Apple stores, because they're just closing everything globally. As for other stores, I have no idea. Retro Break asks, have you ever thought about making a game collecting podcast? I'd love to be able to listen to things like this at work. I've thought about doing it, not really. No, I don't see it as really a possibility in the current moment. Maybe in the future, if I could I would much rather do a podcast with people in person. I don't really want to do virtual podcasts. That's not really, it's not really, I think, satisfying to me. I don't even know what the topics would be about. I feel like these sort of long form videos are the closest we're going to get. So sorry about that. Next up, Anime DVD Blu-ray Preview Guy asks, hey, did you ever find a Simpsons game released in Japan? How about Family Guy or Futurama? Now, actually, very coincidentally, about a week or two ago, I was looking through Mandarake, all of the Super Famicom games they have there, and I discovered that, yeah, actually, the Super Famicom has 2 Simpsons games. It's like Bart's Virtual Bart and Bart's Nightmare. For some reason, I thought they were made by Konami, but it appears that they were actually made by, I believe, American studios, and they got released in Japan because The Simpsons was, I think, sort of well known back in the 90s. It had a dub and a sub version, I believe, in Japan. But ever since then, The Simpsons actually really hasn't been that popular or well known. Same goes for Futurama. I actually knew someone who loved Futurama who was Japanese. But she was the only person I knew who actually knew what Futurama was. Never seen any Family Guy stuff in Japan. That's the most that I know. Next up, Super Sam's Bams asks, hey Jay Contra, I've always wanted to know what your retro gaming setup looks like. Specifically, I wanted to know if you have your retro consoles hooked up to a CRT or a modern TV. I will be moving to Japan in a month, and I plan to collect games while I'm living there. Can you recommend any stores where I could find a small CRT for a retro game setup in a tiny apartment? So my gaming setup is, hold on, actually, maybe I can, okay, no, I don't want to mess with my gaming setup's actually right behind this camera. But so I have a big screen TV, the big HD TV that I use for all my modern consoles, my PS4, my Switch. Next to it, I have a Sony PVM. It's a Trinitron. I don't even know how old it is. I couldn't tell you actually. Yeah, I can't see the model number on it. It's probably 14 inches. I picked it up at a hard off, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still going strong. Absolutely love it. The picture quality is excellent. Hard off is really going to be the only place you're going to find CRT televisions. So if you're living in the countryside and you have a car, it's very easy to get. However, lugging that thing on the train in Tokyo, if you're really strong, I'd say go for it. Otherwise, you might have to rent a car. And if that's not a possibility, I believe that most of the major shipping companies won't even, like, I've asked them to ship some CRTs, they won't even do it. They won't even accept it to ship. You could potentially, maybe if you know someone, that has like a house, they've probably got a CRT laying around somewhere in storage. PVMs are also going to be very difficult to find. You could probably find it on Mercari, the shopping app. Otherwise, like in all of the hard offs, now that I've been to like probably hundreds of hard offs, I've only ever found one PVM, and I was very lucky to find it. I think it was like $100. It was like 10,000 yen when I got it like 5 years ago. I have no idea how much it would even sell for now, considering how highly sought after they are. So next question, video game ethnic slur that I won't mention. Do you ever buy junk stuff, or is it below you to not buy anything that isn't gem mint? I buy a lot of stuff from the junk section. I actually have a PC Engine Duo R that I bought from hard off. I found it in the junk section for like 6,000 yen. The reason it was in the junk section is because it didn't have any of the cords when someone traded it in. So they couldn't test it, so they put it in the junk. Yeah, I don't buy tons of games. I don't buy a lot of junk recently, because the thing is, the junk's all the bulk cheap stuff. So if you're starting from nothing, actually, yeah, if I was starting from nothing, absolutely, I would go to the junk section and I would buy a lot of stuff. But now, because I'm a lot more selective, unless it's something that I really want, like I actually found a Justco N64 in the Justco N64 in the junk section that it had, I think the bottom half had browned a little bit, but otherwise it was in fine condition. So yeah, I mean, I buy tons of junk stuff. Cameo Buckner asks, have you seen any Tales of games? Speaking of junk section stuff, because there's so many Tales games out there, because they were printed in such high quantities in Japan. Oh yeah, you see Tales games all over the place. They're super cheap. If you come to Japan, you'll have no problem finding Tales games. Like basically like all of the Tales games, as far as I know. I don't actually know much about the series. I've only ever played Tales of Symphonia. Trish asks, for how much do you think the PC Engine CD systems go? So speaking of the Duo R, a regular Duo R Tokyo price can be anywhere from $200 to $300 loose. If it's in the box, $400, $500 plus. Duo RX is even more expensive. It could easily go for $600 if it's complete in box. In the countryside, I'd say $200 complete in box, maybe $150 loose. If you're talking about the CD system itself, that like the platform and the CD player with the slot in for the PC Engine system, that I actually don't see too often. I remember seeing one complete in the box in the junk section for like $150. Otherwise, that is just something I don't really see, so I can't quote you the price on that. Gamer Crit MDCU 63 asks, I'm going to Sapporo this week. Can you kindly tell me where to buy secondhand or new PlayStation 1s? I did some research and I might go to Hard Off, Mandarake, Animate, and Geo. Will I find any PS1 games in this place? Really need help. Thanks in advance. I think I left this guy a comment previously, because I think it was going to take me a couple weeks to get this video together. But if you're looking for PlayStation 1 games specifically, and this goes not only for Sapporo, but Japan on the whole, Hard Off will do you well. That's where you'll find all of the consoles at a very good price. You'll find the PS1, the sort of the slim version, the regular PS1s, You'll find all the controllers there. Go to the junk section. You'll find tons of memory cards. Mandarake will have good PS1 games. It'll have all the rare stuff, but it will be very expensive. Animate will not have games. I think they might have some like doujin games, some like indie games, but not that I've ever seen, but it's possible. Gayo, yes, most Gayos that I've been to, but not all of them, will have a pretty substantial PS1 section. Now there you're only really going to find common games, but if that's what you're looking for, Gayo is going to be a great place because it probably has the cheapest prices. I would also highly recommend going to book-offs. I don't believe I've ever been to a book-off that did not have. I believe every book-off I've been to had PS1 games, and the ones in the center of the cities, like especially Central Sapporo, the book-off bazaars, oh yeah, they'll have tons of PS1 games. Maybe not the rarest stuff, but even uncommon and especially common games. So that's where to find PlayStation 1 games in Japan. Seething Simp asks, I've been curious for a while as to what your level of proficiency is in Japanese. Excuse me, I'm not even proficient in English. And how long it took you to learn. You seem pretty competent at it in these videos. Well, I appreciate that, Seething. I don't feel like I'm competent, but I guess to give you a little bit of my language learning journey, excuse me, I started learning Japanese when I first came to Japan. Well, I guess when I found out that I got a job in Japan, so like 6 months before I came to Japan, I started doing like just some intro stuff, but I really didn't hit the books until I came to Japan. I figure it took me about 5 years to get to N2, and that's all through self-study. So there's the JLPT, which is kind of the standard certification for Japanese. The thing about the JLPT is it varies pretty wildly. Like there's N5, which is like basic, N4, which is like you can hold like a basic conversation about the weather. There's N3, where you can have like, I'd say a more daily conversation with anybody that you run into. And then there's N2, which is sort of seen as the standard for business conversation, where you could hold your own in an office. And I found that's generally true. I've worked at after being a teacher, I ended up, I've worked 2 office jobs in Japan, and N2 has at least gotten me to the point where I can, interact with outside vendors to, outsource things, as well as interacting with staff in the office that don't know a lot of English. Although N1, which is what I'm aiming for, I've been studying Japanese for now going on 8 years. I haven't taken N1 yet, so I don't feel like I'm at that top level of proficiency. And also N1, I think the common wisdom, or at least what I've been told, is that N2, which is the level that I'm at, is what a middle schooler, what a Japanese or a person going through the Japanese education system, N2 is what a middle schooler should know. N1 is what a person graduating high school should know in terms of their language ability. And I've heard of people who got N2 in like 3 years. I've also known people who have been here for 10 years who probably don't even, they could hold a very basic conversation. So depending on your free time, how much time you have to put into studying Japanese, as well as just your own learning ability, I never felt that I was particularly good at learning Japanese. Yeah, so that's just that's my story. I can play. I guess I've been playing Death Stranding recently, which I feel has really difficult Japanese. It's got a lot of very difficult kanji. I feel sort of okay playing it, but if you really want to like play games in Japanese, I'd say anything besides Nintendo games. If you're playing like RPGs, N2, N1 is the level you really want to be at. So after that rant, PE5 asks, I'm going to be in Tokyo in 2 weeks. Any hard off or book off you recommend for GameCube, Game Boy, N64 games? I don't have much time, but definitely want to visit one of these stores. So if you can narrow it down, which one to go to, I can plan for it. Thank you. Excuse me for misreading that. So in Tokyo, the hard offs, I have not really been to any hard offs in Tokyo proper, except for like Hachi, the ones out like far west. I would recommend, if you're in Tokyo and if you have a very limited time, as you say, just go to Trader. They have plenty of GameCube games, plenty of N64 games, plenty of Game Boy games. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. just go there. They'll have some of the best prices. They won't have the best prices, but if you've only got one shop that you can go to, I would absolutely recommend Trader for all of those systems. If you have a little bit more time, the Akihabara in Trader, the book off in Akihabara actually has decent prices on GameCube games. Not so much for N64 and GameCube games, especially for the rare stuff, or even like the sort of touristy, the Pokemon games. They're really expensive. Book offs, I would recommend, because not the book off in Shinjuku doesn't really have that many sort of like retro stuff. It has a little bit, but not that much. It might have a lot of loose N64 games actually, and a lot of loose Game Boy games, but not in the box. GameCube stuff, actually, there's the Super Bazaar in Yokohama. Actually has, which is, it'll be about a 30-minute train ride, so maybe if you don't have time, you can't make it. But the Super Bazaar, basically any Super Bazaar will have some of this stuff. But again, if you want a really deep selection with good prices, just go to Trader. Mufasa Judah asks, solid video. I always like your content. Thank you. I was wondering if you've ever seen the Tales of Symphonia GameCube or the red version GameCube, and if you have, how often do you see them and how much are they? So I actually had to look these up because I haven't seen them in a long time. I think I've seen the Tales of Symphonia GameCube a couple times. The Tales of Symphonia Tales of Symphonia GameCube, you can find it on Surugaya online for $270 complete in box. They're basically all of the special edition GameCubes are really expensive. The Tales of Symphonia one is, I guess, one of the more common ones in that I've seen it more than more of the other ones. But like the red GameCube, the Char Gundam GameCube, oh my God, that one is like super rare. I've only ever seen it once in person. That's something that you would be lucky to see at Mandarake, where it's going to command a really high price. And I can't, Surugaya didn't have it online. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I would say over $300 at the very least if you're finding it complete. Loose, $200 maybe. That would just be my guess. I haven't seen it again. Because there's other ones. There's like a baseball GameCube. It's like for a specific team, but I can't remember which one. There's also the Metal Gear Solid. There's the Twin Snakes GameCube, and what's really special about that one is not only does it have a nice silver Metal Gear Solid GameCube, but it also has the port of Metal Gear Solid 1, not Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear. They ported the MSX version to the GameCube on a disc. It's got its own packaging. That game alone goes for $80 plus at Mandarake. I've seen it. And if it's part of the set, the set, I want to say, is probably the most single expensive GameCube item that you can get. I think, don't quote me on it, but it's at least $400, $500, what I saw on Surugaya. And you just don't see it. I've not seen it in a very, very long time. I think the last time I saw it was seriously 6 years ago. And of course, that's when I should have bought it, when it was super cheap, but now it's really expensive. Next question, Seizure Salad, asks, do you have any recommendations for stores in the Osaka, Kyoto area besides Hardoff? Well, actually, I was in Kobe a couple of months ago, and I actually found some really great stores there. So Kobe, if you don't know, Kobe is, I want to say it's about half an hour. It's probably even closer by train. If you're in the Osaka and Kyoto area, you can easily make it to Kobe. It's a really great place to visit. It's got a great Chinatown. You can also head out to Himeji Castle, which is the most beautiful castle you'll ever see in Japan. In the Kansai area specifically, which is sort of like Kobe, Osaka, Kyoto, in that area, there's a really great place called Ojamakan. For people who've been there, they're pretty legendary for having really some of the best prices that you'll find on a lot of loose games, and really just on games in general. They have a really deep selection, especially on your Super Famicom and Famicom games, but you'll find all kinds of stuff there. Really enjoyed going to the one in Kobe. Also, Surugaya has locations in Kobe, and I think they've got some in Osaka, but I haven't been, so I can't tell you. Osaka, actually in Denden town there, they have an A2, which I think is the conglomerate that owns Sudagaya. They've got a shop there. There's a lot of really good shops down there in Namba, I remember. That's the Dotonbori is the canal area, and really close by is Denden town. You'll also find the Super Potato Retrocon there, which has really high prices, but it's got stuff. So that's what you got to keep in mind, is that you might not be able to find what you're looking for at Sudagaya because it's cheap and someone else will have bought it. But if you are looking for something specifically and you're willing to pay the price, Super Potato is probably going to have it. Actually, Super Potato is native, I think, to the Osaka area. So they have a number of stores there, but the RetroCon is really, that's where you're going to find all the retro games. Kyoto, if you're visiting Kyoto, you should probably be spending more time going to the temples there. But otherwise, yes, that's also where you'll find, I know I was there a couple years ago and I went to a couple of the Ojama-cons there and I bought a lot of stuff there because they were like you would find rare, loose Super Famicom games there. And this was during the Super Famicom boom. You found stuff there for like half price. I remember buying Pocky and Rocky for like $45. When now, even in Tokyo, it's still like a $90 game for a loose copy. Excuse me. Okay, so those are the places I know for sure. There are probably some other places. Yeah, the Book Off in Kobe is actually pretty good, although not for like your more modern stuff. I don't recall it had. I don't think it had any retro stuff. But that's all I know about the Kansai area. Great, fantastic place to visit. If you're someone besides Salad who wants to come to Japan and you want to go to some place other than the Tokyo area, absolutely go to Kansai, go to Kobe, Osaka, Kyoto. Kyoto is good to visit once just to see the temples, but I have no desire to ever go back just because it's so crowded. So next up, Oliver 4K asks, have you thought about vinyls in your video? And I assume he's asking about records. I have a small vinyl collection of stuff that, actually hard-offs have, I'd say most of the hard-offs now. Most of the hard-offs that I've visited in the last couple of years have really expanded their record collections because there's a lot of Japanese vinyl collectors out there who have been getting rid of their stuff, and there's been a sort of a vinyl boom in Japan. I don't know if it's still continuing. I haven't bought a record in a little while, but that's mostly because I moved and I don't have a player anymore. But Hard Off has some really good stuff. The prices are usually pretty good, pretty cheap. But then again, for the rare stuff, oh yeah, they know what they have, and they will charge a premium on the very rare stuff. If you're in Tokyo in the Shibuya area, there are a lot of really cool record stores there, like Disc Union. There's the HMV record shop. Some really good selections there. But I haven't been in a while, so I can't comment on there. As for putting it in these videos, I really don't want to focus on music on this channel, except unless it's video game music, like talking about how Battle Garega has probably the best soundtrack for a shooter. Otherwise, as for vinyls, no, I don't think I'll be putting those on this channel. Next up, and then, all right. So here's the big one. This is what I wanted to end this particular round of questions on. Meathoven222 asks, do many Japanese people even buy older games and systems? I thought a lot of gaming in Japan was mostly mobile stuff these days. I just can't imagine a Japanese person hoarding loads of games and systems in their tiny apartments like you see out west. How common are Japanese collectors? Come to think of it, the only channels I've seen on YouTube that are based in Japan are just foreigners, haha. Hold on, I gotta take a drink of water so I can answer this. So this is a doozy, and it really depends on your perspective, because so the thing is, I can completely understand where he's coming from, because if you go to, say, Super Potato, and you look in the clientele, it is going to be anywhere from 70 to 80%, sometimes even the only people in the store besides the clerks will be foreigners. And that's because Super Potato has really good branding. It's what people love to film when they come to Japan, or people who are, YouTube bloggers like myself. Super Potato is your standard. It's where you want to show off. It's where sort of retro gaming in Japan started. But on the flip side of that, it's very well known amongst foreigners, but it's also really well known amongst Japanese people. Just that I think Japanese collectors realize that that's where the expensive games are, so they don't go there to buy games because they have that knowledge. Whereas foreign people visiting Japan, their only knowledge is about Super Potato. Super Potato is so famous in Japan that if you've played Persona 5, I can't remember what they called it in the game, but when you go to Akihabara and you look to buy retro games, you buy it from their stand-in for Super Potato. I just feel like So the thing is I personally don't know any Japanese collectors. It just happens that the Japanese people that I'm friends with, the people that I know, they like know the games. They know Super Famicom. They know Famicom. They know the systems. I actually worked with a teacher who had a PC Engine, but I haven't really ever. I don't really know anybody that would consider themselves a classic game collector. And the point that Beethoven brought up is very true, that you don't see tons of people hoarding games like what I do, because there's not enough space. I've been lucky in the apartments that I've been able to afford that I've had at least some small area where I can store all of my video games, but I can really imagine that even professionals in Tokyo don't have the space. If you're living like in central Tokyo, the apartments there are just so expensive and so small that there just isn't the space to store all of these things, especially if you want to collect for more than one system. So that really prevents people from collecting games. You also have to remember that in Japan, because people work so hard and so often, people's hobbies are often very focused. And this is just my personal feeling. I don't know if this is true or not. But when you look at people who collect video games, and I've seen it, I've actually on Twitter, there's a certain tag, I can't remember what it is, but I have encountered some Japanese game collectors, and they will have, like, if they can afford it, they will have a whole separate room to store their video games, and they will go all out. They will have display shelves, LEDs. I also know there's a great guy on Twitter. I can't remember what his Twitter handle is, so I apologize to not plug him. But he basically just goes around, and he was an inspiration for me to go around to all of the hard-offs. And he has like a whole room that, well, it's not really, the presentation is a bit lacking, but he has a whole storage room just full of old computers, old video game consoles, old video games. I think for one, their perspective is very limited when you're looking for Japanese collectors, because if you're looking on English YouTube, yeah, you're only going to find foreigners talking about the video games here. And the other side of this is that you have to remember that because Japan is the source for all of this, Japan is the source for all old video games, essentially. So you have the whole world demanding these games. The people demanding American video games, like NTSC North American games, are really only people from North America. Like, Americans are really the only ones that want American games. Yes, I know there's a limited base of collectors who are in either Japan or Europe or elsewhere who do collect American games. But the inverse of that is just that everyone wants Japanese games. So you really have to keep that in mind when you're talking about the demand for games. And so it just makes sense that when you go to Akihabara and you're in the game shops, it's going to be lots of foreigners. And just to bring it to what I said before, it's because Japanese collectors will know where to go in Japan to get the best deals. Foreigners who are in Japan, who are visiting Japan, they're really going to only know Akihabara. And so they're really only going to go to a very few specific places that have been recommended to them, like from people like me on YouTube. And so you're going to see the clustering of things like that. There are Japanese collectors of these games. I've seen them when I go to the shops in a much more limited sense, but I think it's for a variety of reasons. It seems that foreigners are more visible in terms of their collecting, and for just the reasons I talked about, including apartment space, which you're right, as well as just the time and the money that they can sink into it. So with that, I'm going to end this Q&A video. We've been going for about half an hour now. If you have any questions, leave me a comment on this video. If you leave me comments on other videos, I do try and read everything. I'm compiling questions for another video next month. Just let me know what you want to know about video game collecting, living in Japan. Just ask me a question about anything. So, I have been your man in Japan, Jay Contra, saying thanks for watching, see you next time, and mahalo.